Hello, good morning, happy vernal equinox. Welcome to Catalyst Energies. My name is Dee. Thank you for joining me. I am so grateful that you are here. As I said, it is the vernal equinox. As of today, it'll actually be exact in terms of the sun reaching 0 degrees Aries, roughly around 5:25 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So welcome back, everyone. If you're new to the channel, welcome. Thank you for being here. And as always, if you find this content useful, valuable to you, do not forget to hit the like button, subscribe, all of those things. Not for my benefit, of course. It's really just to spread the channel far and wide so other people can find this content as well. I hope everyone's doing well. It is Monday. This is the Starseed Ministry. I hope everyone is doing well. Gosh, we have so much to talk about. I know how important it is to be succinct, and to get right to the point with people. Just because we're all so very busy, and we have to take what we are gathering from our own sources of information and applying them very, very much to our own lives, and being vigilant about it, being consistent about it, and that takes a lot more than just sitting and clicking on things. And so I do value your time as much as I value mine, so we will get right into it. But there is so much to cover right now. So we're going to go into the space weather, have a little chemistry lesson. I have some dots for you to put together, some pieces of the puzzle that I'm going to present to you to put together. And I'm not going to put them together for you, because that would really just rob you of the opportunity to use your brain and do it yourself. But I do have some dots that I really am going to put out there for you. And in order for you to connect, I will share some of the services and content that I'm offering right now through Catalyst. Tell you a little bit about a story when it comes to my experience with Kukulkan and the Great Pyramid of the Feathered Serpent, when it comes to equinox and just in general. So, of course, I have a reading to share with you today, and oh, it's really no accident, is it, that all of this I don't know, this showmanship and all of this energy surrounding possible arrest of Trump is on tomorrow, which is our new moon in Aries. So we have our vernal equinox today, where the sun comes into 0 degrees Aries, and then we have a new moon at 0 to 1 degrees Aries, pretty much right after, into tomorrow, the 21st. And it's really no accident that these things are set up, because as much as we are tracking the astrology and harnessing the potential of the cosmic clock, so are others. And it's really important to understand that. So I am curious how people are doing. Have you noticed a bit of, maybe more than a bit of pressure pushing down on you in the last week or so? It has been heavy since Saturn moved into Pisces. And if anything, it has reinforced our need to find ways to instill that inner peace within our own experience, as the pressure continues to really put the squeeze on many of us in our very molecules of our body and our experience. But I'm curious how people are feeling. Are you feeling stuffy? Have you been sneezing a lot? Have you been feeling, crushed in certain ways? Have you been feeling the pressure in different areas of your life in the last week? Well, that's also not an accident, I feel. Have the tones been coming back? Well, so for some people, they never left. And that's a pretty good indication that you need to address your inner conductivity and pH level. I will say that I've been tone free up until just about a day ago, when the Schumann resonance took a very large and wide spectrum kind of amplification, and we're going to look at that today. We're going to look at some of the finer points in the data and cross-reference them to some seismic activity so you can start really paying attention and putting the pieces together for yourself. But I've been pretty tone-free for a hot minute when I started to get really vigilant about that space and the intrusion of the signaling into my space. But I'd say since Saturday, they started to come back. And one of the things that I've shared with people, and I've picked this up from other people, is that if you find yourself getting the tones and you want them away from you, which I think you probably do, if you want them away from you, one of the things that I've started to do is either clap or snap right by the ear that the tone is happening, right? And one thing I have noticed, and perhaps if it's not working for you, it's because you're not being forceful enough. It can't be like this gentle, like, okay, clapping or snapping. It needs to be, I'm not going to do it in the microphone, but maybe I should just so you understand how loud it needs to be. Okay, sorry if you're listening on your headphones. If you're getting the tone in your ear, you need to clap loud, you need to be forceful, and you need to use your voice, right? Whatever you need to say, get out, stop. Whatever it is, and it usually cuts it off pretty quickly, okay? So it's important that we are asserting ourselves in this arena, okay? Because it seems to me that with the equinox and with the new moon in Aries, and Mercury just came into Aries, and I will tell you what, that the spike in the Schumann resonance, the amplification, that was pretty wide spectrum when you look at the actual graph. It was as Mercury was coming into Aries. So, you know, the seed point is now viable. The question is who, you as a seed, who do you belong to? Whose seed are you, right? I think these are important questions people need to be asking themselves. Other big stuff happening this week. Pluto ingresses into Aquarius on Thursday the 23rd. Mars ingresses into Cancer on the 25th, which is Saturday, okay? These are really important transits. We're in our balsamic moon phase right now because we have a new moon coming on the 21st, which is tomorrow. So, and it's in Pisces. So in some ways, as we go into, especially when we get into the reading and see just how easy it is to either surrender ourselves to the divine will or to basically just get carried away by the flow of the delusion. Either way, with the moon in Pisces, it's really, it's seamless. It takes nothing, right? And that hanged man came up today in this reading, which I haven't seen in a really, really long time. So we're coming into the very last days of our Reiki attunement. Tomorrow will be our last day, so for those of you who've participated, thank you so much. I'm going to be asking for feedback at some point, if you're willing to offer it, and oh boy, what else here before we really launch into today's transmission? I don't know. Just the astrology. Oh, and I'll share with you the things that I'm offering, right? The Equinox forecast, seasonal forecast, if you're interested in your own seasonal forecast astrologically. I will be putting up the Aries new moon forecast today as well. And so if you're an Aries Libra person, the lunar transit forecast sale rate is available to you, and of course if you're paying if you're part of the monthly membership, that sale rate is available to you no matter what. And the Catalyst Classroom, I'm going to share with those bring those flyers up onto the screen. Hopefully you're still here after I've effectively just like burned your eardrums out, but that's how it has to be, right? And it has to be that forceful. You have to assert your boundaries when it comes to the intrusion into your space and into your biofield, okay? So, before I bring those things up, I'm going to, if you are in fact looking at the screen, I want to share with you, this was on Astronomy, the picture of the day, right? Yesterday, leading up to today, which is the equinox. And the reason it was up here is because at the equinox time, as the sun is setting on the day of the equinox, the shadows of the sun will present as if Quetzalcoatl or Kukulkan are coming down the sides of this pyramid, the Great Pyramid of the Feathered Serpent, or Quetzalcoatl, Kukulkan. And this was taken in 2019. Okay, and the things that were happening in my life at the equinox in the spring in 2019 had an impact that is still reverberating in my life. So also, you see Saturn and Jupiter, and Antares, the star Antares, one of the royal fixed stars related to Archangel Uriel, the fire of God, okay? So when I had my vision of Quetzalcoatl and Kukulkan in February of 2020, after a cacao ceremony that I did, and then in my dream state, I had the full vision of coming face to face with Quetzalcoatl, and it was terrifying. It was terrifying. I was absolutely terrified because I was clinging to dear life in the top of this tree, watching this battle unfold. And before that happened, and many of you know this story, and so forgive me if you have heard it multiple times, but not everybody has. And I want to put this out there because it's important to realize that this was not a situation that I wanted to be in, but as I was about to face this situation, there's all these women, all of these indigenous women, and they were cooking food, right? It was like out back of a, if you know, like a VFW hall, if you're familiar with that. It was in the back, and it was in a parking lot, and they were all just cooking food. And I went up to them, and I'm like, how can I help? Like, how can I be of service, you know? And they didn't really say anything. They just kept cooking their food. And then they were like, well, white girl, if you want to really help, you got to put the pieces of the puzzle together. And I was like, well, what, you know, at the time of February 2020, I was like, I'm not sure exactly what that means, but okay. And then it was from there that I found myself in this tree, and Quetzalcoatl or Kukulkan coming into the scene and battling it out with the men and destroying them. And I'm just like, you know, clutching this tree for dear life. And then, you know, the dragon or the serpent comes and just kind of, you know, grazes right in front of my face, like roaring in my face. And I was like, whoa. And, you know, I still remember that as if because it really did happen in my dreamscape. So this is this pyramid, and this is in the Yucatan. This is a Mayan pyramid. 2019, I think it is interesting that you have Saturn and Jupiter and then Antares that are all kind of together over top, you know, in the Milky Way as well, at this temple, at this pyramid, and the slithering of Kukulkan down the pyramid at the time of the equinox, right? Whereas the serpent within, so to speak, right? This is coiled at the base of our spine and is meant to go up, opening all of the energy centers along the way, our cerebral spinal fluid, in oscillating and curling up and moving up, right? And so, but Kukulkan comes down, and it is not a pretty sight, I have to say. So, and I still feel that way. So that's just something that I wanted to share here on the equinox, because it's a very strong imagery related to the vernal equinox and this pyramid. There's a reason that they had this all set up this way. They wanted to remember, they wanted to mark it on their calendar, they wanted to not forget what this is. So now, before we get into our science lesson for today, I do want to share with you the at least the readings that are offered right now. So the vernal equinox, and this is all on the homepage. Somebody did let me know that it was not actually getting to a booking site, but I fixed that. So you can go to the homepage and you can book either a 60 or 90 minute recorded reading. This is a seasonal forecast taking you up to the solstice in June. And keep in mind that Mars on the 25th entering Cancer, that is the degree of the sun at solstice. So there is a strong connection to this time period in terms of Mars. And the agent of Aries, right? The ruling planet of the sign of Aries, which is what all this is about. Of course, we have Mercury in Aries. We have the sun coming into Aries. We have a new moon in Aries. We have Jupiter in Aries. We have Chiron in Aries. We have Vesta in Aries, asteroid Vesta in Aries. We have Beyond a Stellium in Aries right now, and Venus at home in Taurus. And Mars comes into Cancer, and Pluto coming into Aquarius for the first time, and will be in Aquarius up until at least 2041, probably not coming fully into Pisces permanently until about 2046. So we got some time here, but Mars coming into 0 degrees Cancer, this has not been a good read for me. And when we get into the reading itself, I will explain to you how I've drawn those conclusions and how I know the difference between what's going on within me, right? My own practice, my own prayer, my own experience as I'm connecting with my creator. And then when I connect in to do these readings, it was a really vast difference. So Mars coming into Cancer, 0 degrees Cancer, that is the June solstice is 0 degrees Cancer, and this is where we have to make a decision. This is where the roots go into the ground and you aren't moving around anymore, right? Mars has been in Gemini for a really long time, and not only has it been pioneering into new intellectual territory, we've been learning, we've been acting on that learning, right? We've been actively learning, and even in the retrograde and the switchbacks and all of the squares to Neptune that have been confusing and have really had us question reality. It's about time that we make a decision. And Mars coming into Cancer, there's going to either be a push into the home, and that's definitely going to come about. But there's also going to be a very protective, very warrior energy of protection of the home and where our personal power really comes from. This is what 0 degrees Cancer represents. And so the new moon is essentially in square to Mars. And so these long-term forecasts give us an idea of the general themes and what to expect. So that's being offered right now. You can book this directly from the website. And of course, if you are an Aries or Libra person, the lunar transit forecast is available to you. This just looks at the month and the lunar transits in themselves related to your chart, your progressions, your starseed markings, all of that stuff, 30 and 60 minutes respectively. You can also book either of these through my website. And of course, if you're a monthly member, this sale rate is available to you no matter what. So Aries and Libra in particular, this is your month because the full and new moons are in your 1st and 7th houses in your sign and the sign opposite of you. So, and the last thing I want to talk about, and this is how I'm going to segue actually into our science lesson for today, is that I've started the Defense Against the Dark Arts Catalyst Classroom session. So this is only available to people who are monthly members. I'm keeping that container really close and tight and closed for now. Not because I don't want this information to be available, but as I'm working through the curriculum myself, the people that have been consistent with me, that are investing in me as I invest in them, this is helping me fine tune it. So, but if you are interested, you can be part of the Catalyst Classroom. You can sign up through Subscribestar. You can pay the monthly fee. And then if you get everything that you need from it, you can just cancel it, right? There's no obligation at all to continue other than like 1 month or whatever. So the first thing we did is go over biochemistry. And some of you are familiar, I'm sure, with this imagery, right? These are the Death Eaters from Harry Potter. So, and they don't talk about biochemistry at all in Harry Potter. As far as they're concerned, there are some people that are genetically more predisposed to be wizards, and then there are Muggles. And I don't actually think that that's really true. And I don't like the way that it has kind of put the dividing line down between people, because I feel like that the ability to harness and be at home in your own field is inherent to being not only human, I just think life in general. So, but it helps people understand the concepts that are coming from that place of, oh, I'm a starseed, so I'm different than people. Yes, your abilities may be more fine-tuned in certain directions because of the markings in your astrology chart. That is absolutely how I do my work, but that doesn't mean that you're somehow different than anyone. And in fact, you probably need this more than other people if you identify that way, because it's important to understand how your biochemistry actually interacts with things. So with that being said, let's get into the actual... and everything you need is in the description box below, including just getting to my website, and that's kind of like the central point with everything. So I would like to start sharing with you... our small but very concentrated science lesson for today, right? These are just some dots to connect for our own benefit. So let's see here. First, hold on one second. Let me bring myself back to what I want to look at. Alrighty. And I'm going to check in, here we go, with the stream real quick. So... and just make sure that everything's good to go. VZ, I got hit with a really loud tone last night. Yeah, see, I told you. And thanks for being... oh, it looks like I buffered a little bit. Hold on. I want to make sure. There we are. Yeah, the tones have gotten pretty loud. And the elevation, right? The escalation is definitely here. And as we go into this, these little pieces of scientific information, these data points, I want you to consider that as we go through this, okay? So even just this morning I was getting them, and I was just like, bam, get out of here. So Mama Wolf Memory says, happy equinox. Interesting, when James was outside, he said he had such a loud tone, he thought it might be coming from somewhere outside him. I'll tell him about the clapping. Yeah, that's just one, that's just one way. But, I am in a baking soda bath every single day. And so these are the types of things we talk about in the Dada, right, Defense Against the Dark Arts, biochemistry class. We talk about alkalinity. We talk about the biochemistry. We talk about how the body is electric and what that actually means and what organ systems. We talk about what organ systems actually regulate your pH and what that even means. And then we talk about really... very accessible things that you can do in terms of regulating your own internal biochemistry to mitigate, okay? To mitigate. It's important that you realize that it's not going to completely, it's not something that's going to take this all away. We are too far along down the road at this point, but it will help. And like I said, I've been in a baking soda bath every day for weeks on end, and that has really been helping. And there are things, right? There are things that you think aren't actually anything until you start changing the lens of your perception, and then you're like, okay, now I know something's going on. And the more that you are bolstering and feeling your biofield as if it is another part of your body, because it is, then you start to use that as your, your shielding. And it's not conceptual. It is quite physiological. And that has also helped as well. So, but the clapping, that's something that interrupts it immediately. So, or a tuning fork, my gosh, anything like that. And crystals, my gosh, the minerals, and that we talk about that quite a bit in the session, the biochemistry session. Okay, so now that we've gotten that out of the way. So here is the Schumann resonance from Sunday the 19th. So what I want to share with you is just to remember, this is roughly this, well, let's look at it at Russian time because that makes more sense to me. So we see on Sunday, which is really Saturday night here in the U.S. So Russia time on Sunday is 12 hours ahead of the EST. So we're looking at roughly midnight on Sunday, okay? Saturday, I'm sorry. So Saturday the 18th into Sunday, this is where we get this big amplification. Now, there's a lot of dots that I've already put together that I just don't have time to share with you, other than look at this very uniform, consistent amplification of the Schumann. And we've talked about this before, how to me this is very suspect now, right? That this is some sort of, I don't know, piggybacking, let's just say that, or more of a response to some sort of artificial amplification, for instance, right? And but I want to show you something, and this is how you can put these dots together yourself. So this is just one example here. So if you notice right here, after the amplification starts to go down, this one vector, right, this one line kind of goes back up again. Everything else kind of comes back down to a baseline, except for this one line right here kind of comes up. So this is the amplification. So we're looking at roughly, now this is 10 p.m. Russia time. So you're looking at 10 a.m. roughly Eastern Standard Time, okay? Just keep an eye on that, or put a pin in that, 10 a.m. Eastern, and make adjustments, okay? So there's a little bit of this whatever this is, right, in this one particular lane here, okay? So if you look at the quality factor, same thing. It drops, and then these two aspects pop right back up. The quality of the tone pops right back up, same time as that amplification that went back up. It's like the wave like crested and it came back down, and this one wave that's kind of like nestled in the middle went right back up again. And the same thing with the quality, the tone of the Schumann resonance. Same thing, same time, 10 a.m. Eastern in the United States, okay? 10 p.m. Russian time. So then you look at the frequency of it, right, which is the pitch itself, and we see that it's kind of the same thing, that it kind of dropped out in this one line and then stayed in this baseline and then came right back up, whereas the rest of them were much more gradual in its pitch, right, or its actual frequency. And what is frequency? The amount of wavelengths per unit of time, right? And so the higher the frequency, the more wavelengths per unit of time, the higher energy. So now, what I want to show you is how you start to put these things together. So what we're going to do, now we know that there was a big earthquake, right, in Ecuador. Before the Schumann resonance did a big spike, okay? And if you look, it's not on here right now because this is USGS and it's very current right now, so it's not showing it, but there was two of them, and then they took the one away, and they were only showing the one. But there were two of them that were almost magnitude 7 in Ecuador. And in fact, it was Ecuador, and then it was Chile and Argentina, and they were straight in a line. Now, let me show you here, this one right here. This was, well, that's actually even, that's right now. So let me show you. These are the newest. What I want to show you is the largest magnitude. All right, so what I want to show you, where's the one from Costa Rica? Did they already take it down? There was one. Oh, they did. Where did it go? There was one in Costa Rica that was a 4.5. That very close to Nicaragua, actually. So, but it's not here anymore. Oh, USGS loves to do this. They love to take things away. It's not on here. It was on here earlier. There was a 4.5 in Costa Rica. You could have drawn a line through it, but they still have the one here in Anchor Point, Alaska. And look what time it is. 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. Right after all of those strange reverberations in the Schumann resonance. Right after everything else started to drop off, and then you see this 5.4 in Anchor Point, Alaska. And again, you could draw a straight line from Ecuador and Chile, like all the way here. And I assure you, I can't believe they took it away. I should screenshot. I got to screenshot these things because that let's see if I can find Costa Rica on this map. That particular earthquake was right at 10 a.m. Eastern. See, Costa Rica's right here, and it was there, and this is saying Nicaragua. So it's close enough, but this is something that just happened last night, or early this morning. My point is that right in those weird anomalies in the Schumann resonance, there was a 4.5 in Costa Rica that was in a straight line from Ecuador, and you could draw that straight line all the way up to Anchor Point, Alaska, a 5.4, and it was at that same time. So that's all I'm going to say about it. I'm just going to say that those things are pieces, they're dots to put together, okay? So the other thing I wanted to show you is, and then we're going to get into some real crazy shit. So the planetary K index, right? The measurement of geomagnetic disturbance. It hasn't been that intense, right? It's been mellow. It hasn't been super dense. The solar wind hasn't been super fast. I mean, it hasn't been slow, but it hasn't gone into storm conditions in the last couple of days, actually. It's starting to calm down. Now, what I'm going to show you is there's this huge, look at how big this coronal hole actually is. It's massive, right? And we know that coronal holes are where we get these high intensity streams of solar wind, and it is about to start facing into us. And they're predicting, gosh, the day that Pluto comes into Aquarius, into the day where Mars comes into Cancer, we're going to be getting hit with solar wind coming from a coronal hole that is taking up a huge chunk of the sun. Look how big it is, right? So the amount of solar wind and plasma that's going to come shooting out of this coronal hole is going to be large. And you can even see here that there are active sunspot regions turning into view. Okay, so what happens when we have solar wind and these coronal hole streams, right? The solar wind gets faster, the temperature gets hotter, we get bombarded with higher density plasma that hits the magnetosphere, it comes into the ionosphere, we have auroras, we have all kinds of disturbance in the magnetosphere, and that has an actual impact on us, okay? So again, right now it's really calm, but this coronal hole is about to wreak some serious havoc on us, okay? So be aware of that. Now, this is where it gets really interesting, okay? These are just dots, okay? Just dots. And boy, this was a gem. This was a gem, and from Suspicious Observers. And he didn't say a damn thing about nobody else had made these connections. Not that I shouldn't say nobody else. That's not true. I can't say that that's true. What I'm saying is that this came to me from Suspicious Observers, but there was no making any of the connections I'm about to make from that channel, and that's important. It's not so much what's said, it's what's not said that allows certain information to stay out, because people just assume that that is the entirety of the information without putting the pieces together. Now look at this article, The Impact of Chlorine Ion Chemistry. Now, for those of you who are in the Catalyst classroom, you got the biochemistry session. This is an add-on to our discussion about pH, about alkalinity versus acidity, about electrical conductivity of these things. Okay, so add this to your toolkit. All right. And for some of you who have backgrounds in chemistry, I'm not telling anything you don't already know. And in fact, you could probably just tell us, be like, yeah, that's totally true. The impact of chlorine ion chemistry on ozone loss in the middle atmosphere. Okay. Very large solar proton events. Now, what's a very large solar proton event? Well, I'd say the coronal hole stream sending solar wind our way is a very large solar proton event, right? We're going to be getting accelerated charged particles, mostly protons, coming into our magnetosphere, into our ionosphere, probably penetrating very deeply into our ionosphere, giving us those pink and purple auroras because they're coming so deeply in, okay? Now, this is saying that it's having an impact on ozone loss, okay? So we know that our atmosphere, the different layers of our atmosphere, the magnetosphere, we know that it is getting weaker, right? We know that it's getting weaker, but why? right? Now, suspicious observers will tell you it's because it's part of a cyclical thing, right? That this is just part of a cycle where the field, because of the shift of the poles, right? That it's a natural event, okay? And I'm not saying it is or it isn't, right? What I'm saying is that's where they reach, that's where the line is, right? That's where the wall is. They don't go any further in explaining anything else. Now, impact of chlorine ion chemistry. So what did I do? I was like, oh, well, that's interesting. So what did I do? I said, well, let's look up polyvinyl chloride, right? And if you remember, that was the spill in East Palestine, Ohio, right? Polyvinyl chloride, and which is just PVC piping, right? It is it's a synthetic resin made of a polymerization of vinyl chloride, right? And that's where that was the actual substance that spilled out. And look at the chemical chemical structure of polyvinyl chloride. Sorry, I'm really excited and terrified and horrified. So I'm trying to keep myself calm, okay? Because when I discovered this, I was like, God damn it. Not God damn it. I really gotta get that under control. So, my mouth. So polyvinyl chloride, right? You see that it's just a hydrocarbon, but the difference is it's got a chlorine atom, okay? Polyvinyl chloride, there is our chloride, is the Cl, right? So I said, oh, okay, well, that's what polyvinyl chloride is made of, or vinyl chloride is made of hydrogen, carbon, and this chlorine atom. Then I said, well, what happens if we burn polyvinyl or vinyl chloride? What happens? Well, it turns into this substance, which is hydrogen chloride, right? So you burn, which is what they did, you burn vinyl chloride, and what happens? It's in that process that it turns into this gas of hydrogen chloride, okay? So, which is HCl. It's just one hydrogen atom, one chlorine atom together. At room temperature, it is a colorless gas which forms white fumes of hydrochloric acid, which is not very fun, upon contact with what? Atmospheric water vapor, okay? Hydrogen chloride gas and hydrochloric acid are important in technology and industry, blah, blah, blah. Hydrochloric acid, the aqueous solution, right? This is the solution of hydrogen chloride when it connects with water, or it's dissolved in water, is hydrochloric acid. That's what it's saying. Hydrochloric acid is the aqueous solution of hydrogen chloride. So you bring hydrogen chloride, which is what is created when you burn vinyl chloride. You burn it, because what is getting burned away? The carbon, right? The carbon's getting burned away, and then you're left with hydrogen and chloride, and you have this molecule that is bonded together with these two atoms. One is positive, hydrogen is a positive ion, and chlorine is a negative ion, okay? So hydrochloric acid is what's created when hydrogen chloride is mixed with water vapor. So it tells you, this is all Wikipedia, the hydrogen chloride is a diatomic molecule consisting of a hydrogen atom and a chlorine ion with a polar covalent bond, which means they share electrons in order to find a sense of balance in their charge, okay? One is positive, one is negative, okay? So for those of us in the Catalyst classroom, you're starting to get it now about hydrogen and hydrogen ions, okay? Chlorine is much more electronegative than the hydrogen, which makes this bond polar, right? It's not balanced, it's unbalanced. It's polar towards one side of charge. So it has a negative partial charge at the chlorine atom and a positive partial charge at the hydrogen atom. So in part because of its high polarity, hydrochloric acid is very soluble in water, right? Which is what we just talked about when they burned the vinyl chloride and it met with the water vapor in the atmosphere, it became hydrochloric acid, and it's very soluble. So when hydrochloric acid comes into contact with more water, it forms hydronium cations. Where did we see this, Catalyst classroom people? Oh, this is what makes a acidic pH in the atmosphere, and then chloride anions. So you get the acidic pH of hydronium, And then you have three hydrogen three hydrogen atoms, one oxygen, right? So it's got a positive charge, and then the chloride anions, which is a chlorine atom that is negatively charged through a reversible chemical reaction. Okay, so why is this important? Well, if you go back to this article, the impact of chlorine ion chemistry on ozone loss due to very large solar proton events. Geez, I really wonder what those chemical spills actually are doing when you put all of those chlorine atoms in the atmosphere. You're making hydrochloric acid. It dissolves into more water vapor. It turns into hydronium ions and then chlorine ions, and then you have very large solar proton events. Do you think it maybe destabilizes our atmosphere a little bit? I wonder. Okay, guys. I will take and this is not directed at anybody here. My gosh, this is my own ire being like, you got to be kidding me. It's just right out in front of us. All you have to do is know how to, basically look things up and understand some basic chemistry, which is why I was started with biochemistry in the Defense Against the Dark Arts. Because if you don't understand this stuff, then how are you going to actually be able to protect yourself, protect your loved ones, protect your home and the land you live on, right? It's right in front of us. Let's see how long I stay up on let's see how long I stay up on YouTube, which is why I'm not going to put the dots together for you. I can't. Let's see here. So this was on Suspicious Observers Today, another gem of a scientific paper, recent advances in studies on magnetosome-associated proteins composing the bacterial geomagnetic sensor organelle. I know that this is a mouthful of words, but the basic idea here is that they are discovering, and this review provided an overview of magnetosomes and magnetosome-associated proteins and introduced recent topics about this fascinating magnetic bacterial organelle, which is an organelle is inside your cell. And so it's basically saying, it's talking about subcellular compartments that have magnetite crystal in them that and other aspects, proteins and lipid bilayers, right? If you understand biochemistry at all. Magnetosomes are then arranged in a linear chain-like positioning, and the resulting magnetic dipole of the chain functions as a geomagnetic sensor for magneto-aerotaxis motility, right? And so it's saying that there are bacteria that respond to geomagnetic geomagnetics, basically. Where did it say? Resulting magnetic dipole of the chain functions as a geomagnetic sensor, right? There's bacteria that has organelles inside their cells that have magnetite crystals that function as a magnetic dipole of the chain and as a geomagnetic sensor. I just discovered this today, so I'm still trying to wrap my brain around it. But again, it's all right in front of us about how not only are we electric, but how we magnetically, down to the subcellular level, have embedded within all life these types of structures that function as geomagnetic sensors, right? And so then when you start thinking about the Birkeland currents, you start thinking about telluric energy and ley lines, and you start thinking about the ways that certain events happen that consistently have an interaction with, high energy solar proton events that come in and disrupt these things, okay? Oh my God. It's so infuriating to realize how much it's been right in front of us the whole time. And to realize it's very difficult not to be hard on yourself when you realize it and you're like, wow, I wasn't even paying attention. And a lot of it is because people are not trained at all to have critical analysis or to be even remotely scientifically literate, right? This is stuff that people are not going to be able to read and be like, I don't even understand what that means. And that is on purpose. right? You should be able to read the abstract of a paper and have a basic idea what it means, even if you're not a specialist in that field, right? And I was fortunate enough to get something out of my academic education that allowed me to understand how research is, developed, how it functions, and to have a baseline vocabulary scientifically so I can be like, oh, but these are all things that we intuitively know. So there's our science lesson for today, everyone. Thanks. So now I'm going to share the reading with you, okay? And we're going to move on to something less, I don't want to say less scientific because it's not less scientific. It's just more intuitive and less materialistic, I suppose. But I really want to stress upon you how important it is that you are paying attention and learning to put these. And that's why I say if I put the pieces together for you, then you just continue to be reliant on all these sources. And most people are leaving out crucial information, right? To keep you on, to keep you going down the wrong pathway or to not recognize what's happening, right? The same thing with all of these spills. It's just like, you get taken up to a certain point of like, oh, we all know this is bad, but why, right? And all of the pieces are out there, just like in my shamanic vision, right? White girl, put the pieces of the puzzle together if you really want to help. And this is what we all need to be doing, right? Because otherwise you don't understand the mechanics of this. Therefore, you don't understand. And I'm with you 100%. 100%. This is not me like lecturing anybody, if maybe myself at the most, right? Of just like, it was right here the whole time. So let's look at the reading. And I really wanted it to be like I wanted it to be a positive reading for the vernal equinox. So you already know what I'm going to say based on that or what it's going to be. It's very challenging. And here's last week's reading. Let's just be, look at how they had the Six of Wands and then the Six of Swords as our outcome, right? Which was a turbulent waters as we are turning away from the defeat that we have been feeling and moving into new territory. But when it's reversed, it's usually not something that we are doing willingly or at all, or being very irrational. So, but we also saw that there was there's always so much guidance around us. And we did have Archangel Raphael as like the top of the reading, right? In our awareness. And this is healing. This is miracles. That's the other thing too. It's important to realize that, we're not the ones ultimately in charge of this whole thing. And miracles are always a possibility. Always. I mean, once they start happening, it's like a cascading effect, right? It's a catalyzing effect, just like catalyst energies, right? Once they start happening, it's just like chain reaction. So I feel like that there continues to be, like for me personally, there are new guides and angels that are revealing themselves in ways they never have before. And it's not so much that they've never been there. It's just now I'm seeing them and interacting with them because I've created a space for that in my experience. And they're everywhere, but we have to be aware of that. So, but I just wanted to show this to you so you can kind of remind ourselves of where we've been. So, and when we look at today's reading, which is really a reading for this whole week and this whole season, because we're coming into the equinox. Now, both of these cards on either side, we have number 11, which is the passion, strength, the Leo card, basically, kind of in this lukewarm position. We have the Ace of Cups reversed. Ouch. I'm getting serious Mars and Cancer vibes with that as well. And we have the Hanged Man also in not hanged at all, like lying on its side. So not fully surrendered, but not surrendered. So I thought that was interesting as well. So when I did my practice this morning, which is where I always start, I was so peaceful, right? I felt so peaceful. I felt so connected, right? I felt my connection to life and to God very seamlessly. You know, I felt really grounded. As soon as I prepared and started to tap in to do this work, it changed. It really did. So I know this isn't me projecting, and sometimes that does happen, and that's part of the, well, how do I say this? That's part of the risk when you do this type of work, especially when you're empathic. If empathy is one of the abilities that are more fine-tuned in you, then you will pick up a lot of other people's stuff, but you'll also project a lot out as well. And so, but I didn't feel this necessarily till I started to tune in and do this reading, and then it was like a sinking. Just like this Ace of Cups reversed, it was a sinking. It was sinking so deeply. And this Mars in Cancer, I think the best use of this energy is to take that and that Mars initiative of Aries, which we have so much Aries, and push that seed really deep into the ground, and to realize here that we're going to have to dig deep and ground down and really establish where our root system goes and connects to, because that's going to be where our power really comes from. So, and that could feel like a lot of what we're feeling. I mean, it's all reversals except for what is surrounding us. It's either reversals or kind of this lukewarm position, right? You know, sitting on the fence in some ways. Where are things going to go? I don't know. Maybe I'll put my energy into things when I see where they're going. That is not a good strategy, I have to say. So let's get into this. Here's the passion, right? Or the lust, if you want to call it that. It's the Leo card, right? The sun in the 5th house, right? This is our authenticity. Now, this woman is taming the beast, right? It is riding this energy rather than letting it devour her, or for her to be devouring anything else, right? She's pushing that seed up in some ways, but it is definitely not upright. So when you have this energy upright, the strength gives you confidence to overcome your fears and your challenges and your doubts. You find the power within yourself to persevere. There's energy, there's joy, there's passion, there's unconditional devotion. Remember, the best case scenario for Leo in the 5th house is your authentic voice is really just an expression of that divine spark that is within you, which is Aries, which is represented by Aries, the seed. You are not a seed unto yourself. You are the seed of your creator. Okay? And it doesn't matter how you identify that. You don't have to identify with a certain religion. I've been pretty clear about that for, years now. The idea here is that you didn't bring yourself into existence. There was a creative force that did that, and it imbues you with its spark. And the creative expression and the devotion, the passion, the joy, the strength of your voice, of your resonance, doesn't come from you as much as you are a vessel for that energy to come up, through, and out, right? And so there's courage, there's influence here. Just like Leo people are so influential, they tend to be the center of the stage. They tend to be very dramatic, sometimes in, a way that is like a black hole, right? Because that's a star that has fallen in on itself. Or they are influential. They're courageous. They have charisma, okay? And there's nothing wrong with that at all. But when this card is reversed, weakness, dissatisfaction, depression, depletion, I would go so far as to say narcissism as well, right? Is all the negative aspects of this energy when it is either turned back in on yourself, it's weak, you're depleted. Okay. Now, in its horizontal position, it says to me that we're kind of straddling this, right? People aren't feeling completely depressed and depleted. Some people are, absolutely. But I would say that this is kind of pulling ourselves out of it, but we're not fully kind of engaged with our confidence to overcome our fears and our challenges. That we're having a hard time finding the power within ourselves, or we have had a hard time finding the power within ourselves to persevere. And perhaps our courage is escaping us right now, or has escaped us, which is why it's in this position. So I would say, in terms of suggestions, especially the present moment and the heart of the matter being the Ace of Cups reversed, is that, you know, we perceive our emotions as obstacles because we haven't learned how to use them. And this is where the difference between authenticity, which is true to you and true to you as a vessel of that spark of divinity, right? The impulse to be, and the potency and desire to be a seed unto your creative force. It's authentic. So if you are fearful, right? If you have emotions that are powerful, but you don't want to feel them, or you feel guilty about having them, right? You got to learn to use that energy and to, instead of squashing them, right? The woman in this card is not pushing anything down. She is pushing, it is being pushed up above the surface, right? But she is riding that beast. She is absolutely in charge of that, but it's coming up and out. And so there's something here that is like, that I think there has been a sense of dissatisfaction or weakness or depletion, and many of us have been feeling it in our own way. And it's time to really start being authentic with ourselves and finding a way to take those energies that otherwise we're trying to stuff down, right? And others, right? The pressure. I can't tell you how many people are sick right now and talking about feeling stuffy and having sneezing and things like that. Even I was just feeling a little bit stuffy over the weekend, which is why I'm vigilant about things at this point, in terms of my internal chemistry, right? And baking soda is my best friend right now. Being authentic in your emotions, right? Allowing you to be this vessel for that divine spark to move through you. Because this is lukewarm and it ain't gonna fly, right? Especially Pluto coming into Aquarius. If there is no balance to that, you're already part of the Borg. I mean, that's just all there is to it. So there's good guidance around this, okay? So don't get too caught up yet in being like, oh God. This is just a snapshot energetically of the moment. Now, the Ace of Cups in its reversal. Now, it doesn't really look any different when it's reversed, there's a stream coming in and coming out. The heart is the vessel, right? You see the toroidal field or the biofield, the aura, whatever, surrounding this. You see the stream coming in from both ends, right? And meeting at the heart. And so in some ways, this is like the Holy Grail in terms of this is where the energy really emanates from, is in the heart. And again, we talked about that in the Catalyst classroom, and how that the heart is electrical and electromagnetic, and we talked about the Heart Math Institute. Now, when it's reversed, now, just in general, this shows the way into our soul, right? And that Cancer energy, the root system does pull the waters of our soul into our experience. It is our power. And when this is reversed, there's a lot of diffusion, irrational thinking, there's loneliness, there's hysteria, all of these kind of negative things in the heart. But I would say, considering the energy is down, down, down in this entire vertical axis, from the One of Scrolls to the Ace of Cups, which are, in the Akashic Tarot, the One is the Ace, down to the Seven of Keys, they're all reversed. The energy is really pulling down. So, you can either find yourself succumbing to the pressure of Saturn in Pisces right now, or you can take the energy of Mars coming into Cancer and be like, you know what? I am making a conscious decision to tunnel my root system deeper than it's ever gone before. Okay. So, but this can be a sense of loneliness and diffusion, and in some cases hysteria when it's reversed like this, right? And look, when it's lukewarm and we're having this experience that we have to take some sort of initiative to either turn it back upright or to make that choice that we're just going to go down, right? And not literally go down. I mean, some people might do that, but I'm saying that Mars and Cancer, we're going to have to make a decision about where our loyalties are, where our power is coming from, and we're going to need to move in that direction, okay? Because when the sun comes into 0 degrees Cancer at the solstice in June, this is where we are fully identified with that root system, knowing that that is where we're going the rest of the year. So this is, I get this tunneling down energy. Now, the 7 of Keys is also reversed, and this is the ascent, okay? It seems counterintuitive. Now, sometimes when this is reversed, you get loss of position, a sudden departure, a fall from grace. Now, what position is this in? This is in those lower chakra areas. This is in the deep subconscious. This is in the place where we root to the earth itself. So a fall, but in mundane ways, right? Sudden departure, loss of a position, fall from grace in your reputation or career expectations. Success seems elusive despite how hard you're working, right? Especially if you're like, I'm trying to go up, and the energy is like, nope. It's taking you down into your crab shell even deeper. Efforts may not be acknowledged by others. It seems like you're starting from the bottom. Now, how hard you work, it's always there, always there. Maybe it's time to rethink your approach here. And it says a different place to plant your flag, right? 0 degrees Cancer is sailors on a ship, lowering a flag and raising a new one. Time to make a decision, right? So maybe you are just putting so much energy that it is like draining you emotionally, or you're not feeling any type of seed point of spiritual connection, and you are feeling the weight of it. So here's another reference to just feeling the weight, and you're not ascending at all. It seems like that you are actually getting knocked off, or that no matter how much effort you're putting in, you're getting nowhere. And this may be something that hasn't consciously come up yet. This may be something that is, you're feeling the pressure in those lower chakras. Again, maybe there's some, you have to change position here because you're working against yourself, trying to get into this position that you are not even supposed to be getting into. So that's something to consider. The 1 of Scrolls also reversed. The Scrolls are the mind, right? The swords on track, right? But it's reversed again. So ambivalence may have sabotaged things for you. Perhaps you are having a hard time now realizing that you've waited too long, or you're having trouble taking action in a certain direction because, I don't know, confusion, indecision, inertia. Remember all those that Mars square Neptune with the 3rd quarter square in Sagittarius, where we are really feeling, that ideological crisis. Where is my consciousness? Because there's a lot of confused motivation here. And betrayal. Boy, that Ides of March. The stories I heard. Wow. You may be coming to a realization that you aren't on track. But it's up to each of us to bring this phase to a close and be conscious of it, right? I mean, we have the capacity and the gift, honestly, of redemption in every single moment, right? It's never taken away from us, but we have to actually, initiate it. It'll take a lot more effort here and focus, but we can renew our purpose. We can be, find that redemption. Whatever it is, right? We can learn from our mistakes, realize that we have kind of been working against ourselves in certain ways, and at least make a decision, or at least come up with an intention of not being confused and not being ambivalent, and renewing our purpose once again. And these things come about in order to teach us, and we can learn from everything that happens, even if it's not something that necessarily was written into the code for the experience. Even if it is something where we truly were screwed over somehow, we still can take that energy and use it authentically, right? Just like we talked about with this strength or passion, we take those emotions and we use that energy as something productive and creative. But this energetic axis is really, the pressure is so strong, from the mind to the heart down to the nuts and bolts, that is pulling us down. And what's interesting is that the Hanged Man is also in this horizontal position, right? Number 12. Now, something I'd like to point out here is that the Passion card is number 11, and then the Ace of Cups is number 1, and then you get 12 across the board here, right? Now, the Hanged Man is exactly what it looks like. Devotion, acceptance of fate. And what is fate? It's cause and effect. Maturity, surrender, letting go. This is the 12th house, right? Pisces. This is where our balsamic moon is right now, in Pisces. Overcoming the ego. Ooh, this is a hard one. Now, when it's reversed, you have a loss of perspective. You're being blocked or stuck. It's important to surrender to what is, right? Things may not be exactly the way that you want them. And I would say the 7 of Keys down here is probably a big part of that. Things are not shaping up the way that you maybe personally envision them in your ego. So it's time to let go and understand, follow, and accept in our lives divine will. And it's revealed to you step by step, right? If you got the full picture up front, your ego would get in the way, and this is all of us, and we would cut ourselves off from the opportunity to have the experience, okay? This Hanged Man in its horizontal position, along with the Passion and the Ace of Cups reversed. If we're coming in lukewarm here and we're having this like pressure in our hearts, we're not really gonna have the passion and the devotion truly to give it up, to surrender to the divine will. I think there's a recognition here that there's something that needs to happen, but what I see here based on everything is that while things are lukewarm, it's not going to be quite, you're just going to be kind of in a holding pattern still. You're not going to be like completely stuck. We won't be completely stuck, but we won't truly surrender. And when you don't do that, I mean, you don't really get the divine plan revealed to you as you need to, because you're surrendering the head to the heart here. And the ego really wants to keep the head on top of everything. And even this on track, it's humbling, right? It's humbling, but we're, collectively still kind of fighting it, which is why I was I just had so much like power and energy behind the science and chemistry lesson today, of just like we have to see things for what they are and surrender to what is, instead of being in fantasy land about it, because how else are we going to actually take initiative and control back over our own selves if we're not willing to do that? So again, the lukewarmness of this card coming into the moment is a big part of, and like I said, Pluto coming to Aquarius, if there is no balance of Leo, and you know what's in Leo right now? There's one thing in Leo. It's Black Moon Lilith in retrograde, right? That is not easy, because she wants to use her feminine power. She wants to be in control, right? She is not interested in the relationship, the creative potential being in relationship to a creator, right? She is like, nah, bitch, I'm in control. And when we have that attitude, then we end up cutting ourselves off from the opportunity to have divine intervention or a miracle in our lives, right? And the stories about Lilith are pretty intense, right? And so that's the only thing that's in Leo right now. So just keep that in mind as well. If you are letting Lilith be the one that's pushing this seed up from, instead of Venus, for instance, who is meeting the north node of the moon today, You know what the Sabian symbol is for Lilith right now? A mermaid emerging out of the water, right? This yearning. It's a yearning. And if that yearning is so strong that you are bypassing the divine will in order to bring it into form, oh my. Oh my. So, there is so much great guidance surrounding this reading, though, so let's look at it. Number 1, the elk. Stand tall and maintain your dignity no matter what, right? You may feel like that you are getting pushed off. You know, you're trying to get to the top of this mountain, and it's just like, nope, I'm going to kick you off, kick you down. You're just going to tumble down to the bottom again, and you're like, it's like Sisyphus trying to push that damn boulder up the mountain. That's what it may feel like. And I'm talking about where you're rooted, right? Where your power is drawing from into your body. When you're all hunched over in your spine, right? If your spine is not healthy and aligned, how are you going to bring that energy up, right? And this is part of like just, pushing people over quite physically, and leading to all kinds of issues in the spine. So the elk is certainly about standing tall in your view of yourself, but I would go so far as to say quite literally, like, you need to get your spine erect. It needs to be upright. Your spinal column needs to be aligned properly so that you can pull that energy up through your spine. And so when you're in a cycle where you feel defeated, you need to literally lift yourself out of it quite physically, right? And you will make more of an impact on your environment when you are in your fullness and fully present. So if you want things to change around you and you want to invite in healing, blessings, miracles in your life so you don't feel completely, distraught and defeated, you have to you have to literally lift yourself up. You have to do it. You have to pull yourself up, and you have to align your spine so that energy is able to move through it, okay? Now, what I love about this next card, it's called the Isolation Chamber. Peaceful, knowing the self. And then the Hermit, which is what? The Virgo card. Now, Asteroid Ceres is moving in her retrograde, is moving back into Virgo, okay? This is a good thing. This is a good thing because we get this opportunity to go back into the fruits of our labor, which Asteroid Ceres, that's what she is, the goddess of agriculture, the grain. So moving back into Virgo is like, okay, let's go back over this, what we are doing to mature our works, our labors, our service, and the fruit, what is it really meant to be offered to? I think that we're going to get a chance to really reconsider this as Ceres moves back into Virgo. But this is how I felt this morning before I did the reading, right? Peaceful, knowing the self, knowing who you are, doing the work under the surface to organize your resources, put them where they belong, mature, purify, right? This is where all of those self-care techniques and modalities come into the picture in terms of Virgo in the 6th house. So you pull yourself up, you know who you are, and even if you feel like at the root of things you're getting knocked off the mountain that you're trying to climb, this is going to make a big difference, these two together. The elk is a very huge animal, okay, and does stand literally very tall, and you're not pushing an elk over. Okay, and then you have the Isolation Chamber, which is about the Hermit and that inner peace and knowing who you are, right? Because there's going to be tons of things that come along and try to knock you down. The pressure, quite literally, is doing this to people. So we have got to pull ourselves up and know who we are. So get your practice down, should be doing something every day, whatever it is, prayer, meditation, doing your self-care. Those are all really important things to be doing. Now, the doppelganger's mirror. This is interesting because it's reversed. Now, on track, right? Also being reversed. The doppelganger's mirror is about becoming, originality, right? You're not mirrored. It's not like you are, your digital copy in the metaverse. This is about knowing who you are and establishing those distinct differences between you and maybe that digital copy of you. And also, you don't have to keep looking at yourself in the mirror and be like, oh, there's never going to be any change. I'm never going to get out of this. And the unicorn, it's about indulging your creativity and your expression and your imagination, but it's really, the unicorn is in fact original. The unicorn is in fact its own being. It is special in that way, where we're all special, but it represents purity and honesty and restoration and unity and healing as well. But, the unicorn is always considered kind of like, when you talk about a unicorn, it's like this unique, original type of being. There's no other unicorn. It is in itself special. And I would say between this and the doppelganger's mirror being reversed, when we're talking about the fact that we don't feel like we're on track, perhaps we need to realize that we are special in the eyes of whatever creative force that we identify and have a relationship with. And also, too, when it's upright, you can see the battle, right? You against you. And yes, maybe we are off track. Maybe we're realizing how off track we've been. Maybe we realize that yet again, we sabotaged ourselves because of our mental trajectory not being focused, okay? Well, we can come out of that. We don't have to keep battling ourselves necessarily. We can actually kind of draw that line of distinct differences between who you've been and who you are and want to be. And there's something about the unicorn. Now, it does talk about, indulging your creativity and your imagination. And I would say with the moon, the balsamic moon, especially in Pisces right now, it's going to meet Neptune, right? And it's very, very dark, that the isolation chamber and knowing thyself also being involved in this, seems to me that we have to find that place within ourselves where we are in fact our purest being, and so that we do actually allow ourselves to surrender to divine will and realize that the plan will be revealed to us step by step, and to trust that. If we don't allow ourselves to indulge our creativity, our imagination, this part of ourselves that is unique and special and magical, which is everybody, and we just keep battling ourselves, then yeah, we're just going to be kind of riding the fence the whole time and be lukewarm. And that's exactly when Pluto comes into Aquarius and basically starts, extracting all of the power from the collective in terms of our networking, in terms of our resonant connection with each other, right? It's the voice, it's the collective voice and civilization as a whole. So that's the other thing too. You don't want to get caught up in your digital copy, and many people will. I mean, there's nothing we can do about that, but we have to also be easy enough on ourselves to be like, okay, I can still move forward. Just because I got off track already doesn't mean there's nowhere else to go. And again, your emotions, your authenticity is more powerful than just squashing it so that you can either so that you can empath the whole situation, right? I mean, that's not going to work either, right? It's important that we're empathic. It's important that we're compassionate towards other people, but we don't want to push away our authentic feelings and expression just so that we don't rock the boat. And even if that's our inner boat, that's really hard. That's really, really difficult. So oh my. Okay. The last thing we're going to do here is just kind of come into, we're going to look at the astrology, and then we will be done. There's our microbiology. All right, guys. So here's our equinox day. And like I said, I'm going to go way more into the astrology when I do the new moon. And of course, if you want a personal forecast, you can definitely book that, and then you can know what to expect for the season based on your chart. And, you know, a lot of times, I'll tell you what, I mean, a lot of times it's pretty spot on about, you know, the general dynamics and what people are, you know, can expect about, you know, especially when they're looking for guidance around certain actions or decisions they're going to be making, you know, with their life over the next couple of months and what to expect. It's usually pretty spot on for the most part. And that's because this is a code, right? This is a code, an algorithm in some ways that you can look at and be like, okay, this is most likely how it's going to play itself out, and this is how I can exercise the free will that I know that I can have in relation to these things and be ready for them. So the only thing I really want to say about the astrology right now, since I'm going to do so much more about it, you know, in terms of the next 2 weeks and the Aries new moon, which is tomorrow, is, like I said, Pluto's coming into Aquarius, Mars is coming into Cancer, Lilith is in Leo. This is the average Lilith. Let's look at the actual oscillating lunar apogee, and yeah, it's in these Atlantean degrees of late Leo. So that's the other thing too, is those the boomers out there that have Pluto in these degrees, boy. Wow, that's all I'm gonna say about that. Mercury, Chiron, Jupiter, all in Aries. There's a lot of Aries right now. So there's a lot of impulsiveness. There is a lot of enterprising. There's a lot of boldness. There is a lot of penetrating, outward, all of the impulse to be. You know, there's a lot of it happening right now, okay? And then Mars coming into Cancer, the ruler of Aries, basically going to be squaring the equinox, squaring the new moon as it comes into Cancer on Saturday, the 25th, which I believe is Annunciation Day in terms of a more of like a religious calendar. So it'll be time to make a decision, right? Where are your roots? Where are you going to dig down deeper than you've ever dug before? And, you know, what are you, you know, what loyalties and faithfulness are you going to be acting on? Because that's what Mars does. It acts. It pushes. Just like the seed, once it's in the soil, there is a relationship between the shell of the seed, the inside of the seed, and the soil. So the other thing I want to bring up is that Venus is conjunct the moon's north node today. And the degree that the moon's north node has been sitting at has a lot to do with that void that is asking us to discard the past. And part of discarding the past is that we need to accept the space that it creates in order for something new to eventually show up. But this degree has a lot to do with just that space. And the impermanence of all material and social bonds. Venus meeting the moon's north node today really puts this into a framework of actual materiality. And Venus being in her home territory is absolutely very powerful. She is, and she wants to be, you know, she wants to be comfortable. She values beauty and balance and symmetry and comfort, all of these things. And this is an uncomfortable degree if you remain attached to all of the things that will in fact decay. All social material bonds, all natural compounds decay. That's a very Buddhist type of thing. So Venus ruling Taurus and being the living soil, it's like, without these compounds decaying, there is no fertility of the soil for the next round, right? And the next round is really coming into the picture now with the equinox and certainly a new moon that's happening tomorrow at 0 to 1 degrees Aries. So there's something really strong about this connection, that the underlying trajectory at a soul level is having a very physical, material, embodied experience right now. So that could have to do with your resources. That could have to do with the nature of your relationships and love. That could have to do with your actual body itself. It depends on where you find these Taurus in your chart and what house it's in, if is it making connections to other things. That's going to give you a lot more information. But this is a very powerful connection today that brings something that often is very difficult to wrap your head around into something really, really, really palpable. Venus in Taurus is incredibly palpable. It's incredibly resourceful and materially oriented and value oriented. So it could be very difficult to accept that what you have valued is for the level of soul for the level of soul growth and evolution right now is subject to the same decay that everything else is. And for those who really embraced the Ides of March and knew what was happening, I feel like that there's a release point here, and there's a sense of the surrender comes so much easier, and the peace is so much more accessible with a transit like this, because we're going this direction whether we like it or not. That's the thing about the North Node. It is pulling us. It is dragging us. It is a dragon on its way to its treasure, right? And so that can also be kind of obsessive as well, and you have to keep that in mind. And for, you know, those who are, the controlled demolition is still very much at play here with Pluto in the last degree of Capricorn. And in fact, the sun will sextile Pluto. Mercury already did it. The sun is going to sextile Pluto today, and then the moon will sextile Pluto tonight into tomorrow, depending on where you are, before it comes into its new moon phase. So this sextile is going to really amp up your commitment. It's going to amp up your drive and your motivation to really transform. And the sun at the last degree of Pisces is about how, well, let me just read it, actually. The Sabian symbol for 30 degrees of Pisces is the great stone face, the power of clearly visualized ideals to mold the life of the visualizer. You know, each individual selects the image within themselves to which they are going to shape themselves outwardly. Okay, so the discernment is really necessary, because whatever you are visualizing internally is going to be how you outwardly manifest it into this brand new seed point of reality here with the equinox and the new moon. So this sextile to Pluto is a moment here where we get to kind of decide, and we have this really like this infusion, this turbo boost in some ways, to get really deep into, you know, what, regardless of controlled demolition or not, what are we going to do? How are we going to take the energy of this situation and apply it to where we are going through our creativity, through our expression, through our authenticity, right? That's what the sun represents coming into Aries, which is the beginning of spring, right? What the seed is inhabiting, or what is encapsulated in the seed, is going to be what really generates that potency and desire. So is it going to be based on all the fear and the despair and all of the unknowns around, and or anger around the controlled demolition, or are we going to feel the motivation that much more to be a seed unto our Creator and surrender to that divine will, just like the hangman represents? Those are questions we all need to ask ourselves, and it's not like it's that easy right now. There's so much pressure pushing down on all of us. So I think I'm going to leave it there for today. Thank you so much for being here. I truly appreciate all of you so much. I'm going to check in with the stream real quick here. Light on Change says, good morning, Dee. I miss you. I've been busy. Hope you're doing great. Thank you. I am doing well, and I appreciate everyone being here and participating in the chat, leaving comments, letting us know how you're doing. If you need extra support, don't forget that everything you need is in the description box if you're interested in a reading or the forecast, or if you're interested in the Catalyst Classroom and you want access to the first session for Defense Against the Dark Arts and the biochemistry, because that is, once you understand those basic things, then the rest of it that builds off of that is going to make a lot more sense, I feel. So that's all there for you in the description box. So take care of yourselves, everyone. Take care of each other the best you can. I love you. God bless you. And I will see you, well, I'll see the Aries people here very soon with your new moon forecast. In the meantime, I'll see you guys next week for the Starseed Ministry. Bye.